Okay, hi everybody. It's exactly 2 o'clock, and I think we've got quite a few attendees joining. So, wanted to add my welcome. My name's Scott Dodds. I'm CEO of Ultima. I'm joined today by Matt Hudson, who's the pre-sales director with me in Ultima as well. So, this is the third in a series of quick events we've been doing to update you basically on what's been happening with our use of Copilot and what we've been learning over the last few weeks as we've been an early access partner to the Microsoft program. So it's today's the third, I said, in the series. We've done some demos, we've done some things to show you actually how it's using in action. But today we wanted to just take you through a little bit more of the learnings and a bit more of the background to getting into Copilot and some of the learning, some of the things that we love and some of the things that we're wary of, frankly, in the first few weeks of using it. So let me just get into the agenda really for today. A little bit of a repeat as always, because we have thankfully some very new attendees to these sessions. So we'll do a bit of a repeat on what the Copilot system is. Matt will take you through that in the first few slides. We're going to talk a lot more about the questions that we've been asked through the various webinars. And also the internal questions we have and some of the things that we think are relevant to take you through, some of the things that we learned, as I said. And then we're going to leave you with resources, and everybody who joins this session, everybody who's registered, will get access to all the different different resources that we have available to you, and also the links to the various sites that we mention, all those things. So so that's what we're going to run through today. And I'm going to ask Matt, Matt, to if you could just kick off and give everybody a quick recap on the Copilot system.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Again, it's a bit of a quick run through about what we've gone through previously. It'll be a couple of minutes, but Microsoft 365 Copilot, what is it? So it's a large language model. You can ask it whatever you want. You can ask it in natural language. You can misspell it. You can misgrammar it. You can ask it a bunch of things and it will go ahead and do those things or bring you back results. So it's a large language model, very similar to what is ChatGPT ultimately. That's combined with your Microsoft Graph, which is your personal data made up of all of the files inside of your Microsoft ecosystem. So all things like Word files, PowerPoint files, Excel documents located in OneDrive or SharePoint, in Office 365 online, basically, including your emails, your Teams chats, your shared files inside of Teams, any of your team sites, any meetings in your diary, and any diaries that you have access to. So it forms this kind of unique, personal to you collection of your data and indexes it in such a way that it's personal and secure to your environment. So you can ask it a question and it knows about what you do, what you're doing, how you're doing it, what files you've used, who you've interacted with, who you work with. And then all that's directly inside your Microsoft 365 app. So inside of Word, inside of PowerPoint, inside of Excel, Internet Explorer or Edge, you can ask it directly inside of there as a kind of side plane where it will say, well, I want to do this, or want help here, or want information here. But also it does it in line inside your application. So inside of Word, as you type in a document, you can literally just say, make this more formal, make the previous sentence more formal as you type along, and it'll go ahead and do that. And all that's combined with the knowledge and the data collected inside of GPT, so that's the internet information, all combined together to give you access to that data. And then a little bit more about kind of what that means for the M365 Copilot user. So it's real time to your data that's in your personal sphere. So if you receive an email now, that will be part of your graph, Microsoft Graph, and then you will be able to reference that email that came in 30 seconds ago to be able to create a response or be able to do whatever you want in real time. You don't have to wait for an index at 3 in the morning or once a month or whatever. That data is there instantly. It's secure and compliant and privacy. It's based around your security boundaries. So if you can see a file, it can see a file on your behalf. If you've been in a chat or been privy to a chat or even been on a meeting where people have been chatting, it has access to that chat. It has access to all the security things. So if you've got access, it has. If you don't have access, it doesn't have it. So the actual security is not any different. The difference is much more access to those files can be done quicker and easier. So there's an inherent risk that you can get access to files you maybe didn't know you had access to. It's architected to protect your data. So none of the data that goes into M365 Copilot is accessible by the by ChatGPT or the OpenAI system in the back end. This is secured into your tenant. This is your information. It's not shared. Unlike ChatGPT, where you ask it a question, it returns, and if you upload documents to it, it's going to have access to those documents that you've uploaded. So, but this is all secured inside of your tenant, and it's secured for your boundary. Anything that you ask it won't be accessible to anybody else in your organization who asks that same question. As I said on the previous slide, it's integrated into your everyday app. So as you're using Word or Edge or whatever you're using, it's there, and it's accompanying you with everything you do. And actually, Scott talked about in webinar 2 that there are multiple access mechanisms into Copilot. Not only is it in a Word document, it's beside a Word document, it's accessible via a web browser, it's accessible via the search bar in your Windows 11 taskbar. It's kind of everywhere in the ecosystem of the Microsoft stack. And then users can control that data as well. So they can say, no, that thing you just said, Copilot, I don't agree with that, have another go, or discard that, or build upon that, modify that. And admins can have a certain level of control of that as well, which is quite an interesting thing. We're starting to get into understanding what the admin can control over a user behavior. And then designed to integrate new skills. So as it learns, it will do things differently as it gets to learn your behavior, and it will learn new behavior from you, and it will then add that to its own knowledge. So it will be able to build simple tasks to begin with, and then we'll get aware of those and build more complex tasks. So what I'd like to do actually now is go through, we'll talk about M365 Copilot across all of our webinars that we've done, the 3 webinars we've done so far. But actually it's only part of the overall Copilot suite. And this is accurate as of last week. It could have actually changed. There's so many new Copilots coming out for Microsoft products. It changed on a regular basis, but I've got to take you through the slides. So the first one, if you look at the top left, it's the browser. At the moment, inside of Edge, you have access to work chat and web chat. So work chat is your M365, your personal data, your Microsoft graph. So you can query it, say, what emails did I have last week that are really important to me? When did I last email Fred? When does Fred have the next available appointment? So that's my work. It understands my context of graph, and that's available inside the browser. And inside the browser also is the ability to ask it more generic questions, the web version. So what's the top 3 trends for the IT industry this year, for example? So ChatGPT ultimately, but inside of your web browser, but secured to your tenant. So this isn't going across the internet to a generic GPT engine. It is your Microsoft engine inside of your business. Then you have the M365 Copilot suite. So this is Word, Outlook, Excel, PowerPoint, Teams, Loop, and OneNote. You've seen the demos that we've done previously in the other webinars, but these are all inside the M365 license that you buy for Microsoft 365 Copilot. The browser one, the work version of that is part of the M365 Copilot license. The web version is part of your Microsoft 365 license, so E3, E5. You can turn it on right now if you want to, the web version of secure version of GPT. And then all those interact nicely together. And then you've got the Microsoft Windows Copilot. So on the right-hand side, you've got Windows Copilot. Inside of Windows 11, you have Copilot with Bing on your taskbar. You can bring that up whenever you want and ask it questions. It's the same one that's inside the web browser, but it's embedded inside of Windows. And then we got Paint. They didn't call it, for some reason they didn't call it Copilot, they called it Paint Creator. So inside of Paint, inside of Windows 11, the latest version, you can ask it to generate images for you. So create me an image of 2 people in a red vest around a table, so I can get so I can put it into my PowerPoint presentation, and it'll go ahead and do that, and you can paste it in. So that's all as part of your productivity stack. And then outside of the productivity stack, you then have a bunch of Copilots for specific use cases. So one for Sales Copilot, which is your Dynamics Copilot. That's a license which is included in part of Dynamics, depending on what license spend you have. That will give you similar access to your kind of the web version, but for your Dynamics data. So which customers have bought the most stuff from me in the last year, or whatever questions you might ask it. Again, that large language model access to business data. Fabric Copilot, so your Microsoft Fabric, which is all your data and analytics. You can ask it to help you generate reporting, create me a report based on this data, create me a report based on that. combine this data with this data to create a new piece of data. Again, very large language model based interaction with your data platform. Security, this is one for Sentinel. This is still in private preview, I believe, at the moment, as are some of the others actually, where this will help you fix security issues as they occur. So you're running Sentinel, which is your SOC for Microsoft in Azure, bringing in feeds from firewalls and your M365 data and such. This will be able to create automated playbooks and execute those automated playbooks based on behavior that it sees. So you can get it to, we've seen this behavior, please now disable this account, and it'll go ahead and help you do that. One for GitHub, so help you create code, check code, comment on code, and so forth. One for Power Platform, again, for low coding. Some of that can be quite hard work when you're starting to ask it to generate a connector to go and do X or Y inside of Active Directory. Actually, you can ask it in large language, create me a connector for Active Directory, here's a username, here's a password, and it helps kind of create that sort of code. And then, well, certainly not a new one particularly, but a newish one which has come up, which is really quite interesting, is Beaver Insights Copilot. This is being able to provide you access to understand how engaged and how productive your workforce is. It's more of a management tool for leaders to understand what people are doing, how they're working, how they're making use of stuff, whether it's productivity suite or whether it's Copilot, and how they can make better use. So all those things together create a really nice suite of products. And then we've also got one thing that these are all the internal Copilot functions. So all these products kind of talk to each other, but in certain indirect ways. But you can also create direct connectors between M365 Copilot and these other products. So I can create inside of the admin suite of Microsoft 365 Copilot, I can create a connector to Dynamics, which means inside of Word, I can then ask Word, create me a report for this customer from Dynamics of all the spend they've done in the last 3 months, and also include any tickets that they've raised for hardware procurement or whatever, and it will go and put that inside a Word document. So I don't need to break out into Sales Copilot. If I've got that connector in M365 Copilot, it will suck that data in from there. And then you have external connectors as well, which aren't included here, but ones for ServiceNow, you've got paid for ones for things like Salesforce or Adobe or all these other products out there. People are creating connectors which you can use the M365 Copilot as the gateway into those things. Cool. And just to show you, I've got a next slide. It's just a little demo. You know, I talked about the two guys stood around a table discussing Copilot around a very large table. So this is the code creator inside of Paint. Really quite cool. If you're creating loads of PowerPoints at the moment, or you're creating PowerPoints and you have to find stock images and pay for stock images and stuff, actually you can now get Paint to do that for you. You can create stock based on whatever it is you want and then paste it straight into your PowerPoint presentation. Cool. So we're now going to go on to talk a little bit about what we've learned, what's the interesting things that we've seen out of Copilot, and what are the kind of more things you need to be aware of that if you're going to deploy Copilot in your environment that you need to take a little bit more thought about and worry about how that's done. So the first one is around data security. As I spoke, what we really like about Copilot is the fact that we don't have to change our security posture inside of our tenant. We're using E5 already inside of our Microsoft tenant. We're secured. We've got DLP. We've got email security. We have sensitivity labeling and all those sorts of things. And we have pretty decent controls over how long files remain with open access, i.e. multiple people can read a file before it gets locked down to fewer people. If you've got all those security controls in place already, you've got all those things, you kind of utilizing the E5 suite or parts of E3, but certainly E5 suite really well. And because the semantic index is personal to that user, there are no real security kind of breakouts. And we tried this. I've tried it really hard to get it to give me data which I shouldn't have access to or don't have access to, and it doesn't do that. What's also interesting is sometimes when you ask it a question that's a little bit questionable as whether you should be asking it or not, it will respond with I'm not able to give you this information, not because it doesn't have it, but because there are inbuilt controls that say this is not appropriate data to surface for this user. An example of that is I asked it to provide salary details for some people. Now, I may have those details, but actually return saying, sorry, this salary details is not something that I would give out. Didn't use as wording, but that sort of thing. So it's security aware, understands sensitive nature, but actually as long as your security is good inside of your O365 tenant and your file security is good and whatever, then actually the data security is relatively straightforward. It's not the big headache that everybody was worried about.
Okay.
So we go on to the next one. Yeah, Scott, talk a bit about automation.
Yeah, so I think you kind of touched on it already. Matt's touched on it just a minute ago. But actually, the point here is that I think when we initially thought about Copilot, we thought it was embedded into Word and Excel and PowerPoint and Outlook, etc. And that's where you surfaced it. Actually, using the 365 chat bot, essentially, it goes across all those applications and all those different sources to bring it all together. So you actually don't have to be inside the applications per se. You can just go and find the data. And it brings it all back on the prompts that you ask it. It'll bring it all back, and it'll give you a whole list of where the data is come from, and some of the referencing that you can go and look at. So it'll bring up where the PowerPoint is, where the Word or the Excel is, and you can literally go straight to it from the chat prompts. And as I showed in the demo the other day, the last week's one, I think, it appears inside the browser. It appears inside Teams now as a chat bot inside Teams. It appears inside the applications. You can literally access it in a whole number of different ways. But using that chat experience, it enables you to go across all the different applications rather than just be in a single application and then have to move to another one to go and find the data. So that's a really important part of it. So I think the optimization, the speed by which you can find things, by which you can learn where the data is, that essentially it's a very, very powerful and very sophisticated search engine using natural language to pull all that data. I think both Matt and I have done that in the last couple of weeks. I remembered I had a customer meeting where I needed to remember what the statement of work was that we produced a few months ago, and we referenced that as part of a quarterly update. I was able to find it instantly, and all the other emails and referencing to that, as well as all the PowerPoints and Excels and everything associated with it. So it was just it's incredibly powerful to bring all those things together in a hugely optimized way. So it's a huge time saver, but also incredibly accurate. We've seen so far on our own Microsoft Graph, it's been incredibly sophisticated. I think that's true of what you've seen as well, isn't it, Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that kind of blends into the next piece as well, which I'm going to talk about around content creation. It has sped up a bunch of tasks that we do, particularly in more the creative areas of Ultima. So in marketing, in pre-sales, and some other areas where we have to create content from scratch. So we spend a lot of time looking at files, getting files in, putting that into a PowerPoint, moving it around, messing around with it, getting it QA'd, sending it back, and changing colors and stuff. So here's we've kind of listed here a really great example where marketing were going out and creating some slides for an event. And it had to be a certain format, certain things in there, certain content, which had to pull in from multiple sources. So previously, we looked at a similar one where we've done this before, where we've had a few hours of looking at all the data, making sure it's all right, picking bits of data that are interesting and summarizing it, going back to the SME and saying, actually, does this now still make sense? Because by summarizing data, you might have skewed it slightly, or summarizing information. Then go back and design it, design the slides, put all the information in there, and whatever. We outsource some of that, or have done in the past, and then that costs us a fair amount of money. But going forward, they've already seen a massive saving from this content creation. I'm seeing it in my pre-sales team as well, where they're able to pretty much build an entire deck in a matter of a few minutes. So you feed it a bunch of information, say go, and it goes and builds it. And then you're looking at kind of swapping the image out, making sure it's okay. Then you have to change the template, is still not quite there yet. We're working on it. It's close, but it still sometimes can't work out where pictures go. So you still have to do a little bit of manipulation at the end and get things working. But ultimately, that 15 minutes of cleaning up, making sure it's okay, changing some of the colors, it's turned this, what used to be a whole day job into an hour, or potentially even an outsourced to another provider, saving us that outsource. So we're seeing that as a huge, that content creation, that creating unique stuff, particularly PowerPoint and Word, from nothing, is really speeds up that time saving.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, Matt, we've showed that in some of the demos as well. I think the money saving there, clearly this is one example of outsourcing some slides, and a lot of companies do this just in terms of time and creativity. This literally will save us, £5,000 every time we want to try and do that, which is probably, I mean, the cost of this is $30 a user per month. So you can see immediately how just on one use case, you can start getting the money back very, very quickly. Just on this example, there've been many other examples of, creation of Word documents or whatever it might be. And so there's some real, huge time and money saving potential in these areas. I think if I go on to the next slide, so let me also talk to you about some of the things to be wary of. I think there's an interesting example here. I think everyone who's used ChatGPT or used anything to do with AI knows about this concept of hallucination. And it was interesting, I think, on all the Microsoft graph data that we're talking about, the data that's within our corporate systems, as it were, the accuracy of that and the lack of hallucination has been quite interesting. It's been very, very accurate. It's found everything. I was doing a search actually the other day, funny enough, just researching on the market and looking at asking a question about Ultima and what it responded with, and it came back with a complete hallucination of us actually selling or doing a strategic partnership and selling part of our business, interestingly, to a competitor in the marketplace for a particular part of our business today. And when I questioned it and said, well, that's wrong, we don't, Ultima does this and that, the other, it came back and said, no, I think you'll find that this is true, and here's what I reference. And interestingly, what it did, it referenced our own website, right? Which basically I then clicked on to see what that looked like. I was very interested to see what the hell was on our website that told us that we'd sold a part of our business, and it was completely wrong. It had no referencing to anything it said. It was completely made up, and that was a really salutary lesson for me, actually, just to suddenly realize that actually some of this stuff is just not going to be real, right? And so this idea of being a co-pilot is a very important one. I think it's a very cleverly named piece of software from Microsoft, because you need to co-pilot it. You cannot just let it go off and do things on its own. You need to check it. You need to understand what it's written. And so there is this editorial right you need to have on top of it to make sure it's right. And so we will continue, but what we're going to learn from that is, why did it find that? And the answer is we don't know. It's a black box, really. The LLM is not open to us to understand how it did it. But there's no question that it might have found some data from our website or from public quoted data or whatever that it's got confused about. So it enables me to then now go and check what is out there on the web around that topic, and why did it not surface exactly what it should have done, which is what our accreditations in a certain area, what we're doing. So it was just a really important lesson for me personally, but also for us as a business, to really understand how this thing is put together, and you have to be very, very careful with it. And I think everyone said it, but there's some interesting, really scary examples of that.
I had another great example. I got it to create a slide deck for me from our public sector business stuff, and it went ahead and created this amazing slide deck about what we're doing in public sector, how we're doing it, some of the frameworks we're on. And then it talked about this framework in really good detail. It's, oh, that's really cool. And then it said this framework's available globally. It's like, we're clearly not available globally because it's a UK framework. So, but it was everything was perfect. This one sentence in it, which was just clearly wrong, and it just made it up. And again, I referenced, find out where it came from. Couldn't find it. It just made it up on the spot. Yeah, absolutely crazy.
You have an argument with it, and you keep asking it, saying it's wrong, and it keeps denying, saying no, you're wrong, and you just goes into a circle.
It's like my 6-year-old Scott.
Yeah, exactly like that. So anyway, that's a key one. But I have to say, and so just to finish on this slide, the accuracy on the corporate data that we have and on the Microsoft graph data has been extraordinary. It's just when it went out to the web and tried to look around things in the world, it came back with some really strange examples. So it's something to be careful about and watch for.
So the adoption stuff.
Yeah, I was going to talk about adoption. So I'll talk about this quickly, and then you can add to this, Matt. I think one of the things that's very important to understand, and I think this is again a learning for us in the first 2 or 3 weeks of rolling this out, is that you really need to learn it. You need to learn how to use this. It's got to be a habit daily of how you use it to start getting that benefit of using it. If you just dip in occasionally, it isn't as powerful, it doesn't learn as much, and all those things. I think it does require this concept of intentional practice. you need to understand what it's doing. And it also, very importantly, I think you need to understand how these applications work. So if you don't really understand the full functionality of PowerPoint or Word or Excel, it's very difficult to understand exactly what to ask it, because you need to be quite specific in some of these prompts. And as you talk about prompt engineering, how is it going to be asked? How you ask the question is incredibly important. It gives you different responses based on how you ask the question. So I think it's a learning piece that we've really got to understand. The adoption of this technology is not just fire and it's all running and everyone gets it. You have to learn it. And I think you also have to think about it as being a manager. You're the manager of your own Copilot. So how would you train it? What do you need to feed it with? How do you need to get it to learn? Or not, literally think of it as a member of your team, essentially. So there's a whole bunch of stuff here, but there's clearly roles that we've mentioned already in the last webinars that are going to have huge benefits from this. Not everybody initially, but over time you can see the way Matt's shown you all the different versions of Copilot, and there's going to be more and more every month that goes by for specific roles. But I can see it absolutely in marketing, in sales, in finance. Anyone to do with content generation of any sort is going to have huge benefit. And the question is, what are you going to do with that time benefit? And how do you use that? And how do you quantify the return on investment for that time that you save to do those things? So I think anything you want to add on adoption, Matt? Because I know you've been
So a little bit of personal experience from us as well. We've been running this now for a couple of months, I think, or certainly over a month, 6 weeks or something. And we've had mixed results when it comes to adoption. And what's interesting is we can measure the results of the adoption and measure the productivity that's gained. So, and we're able to even see what tools or what bits of Copilot people are using and which bits they're not using and why, and to then find out why. And we can say that and we've seen some people are kind of saving 4-5 hours a week of time. We can see it in the Beaver Insights of what they're doing and what they're saving. Some people are saving minutes, and some people are saving loads of time in PowerPoint or whatever, but not any time in Outlook and stuff. So they're not utilizing individual components. So part of our adoption has been roll it out, train a bunch of people, get them to do it, and then look at where the adoption's not being taken up and go, right, okay, why are these two people doing the same job function? One of them's using it all the time and getting loads of productivity, the other's not. And every single time, pretty much, that we've looked into it, it's because they think they're too busy to use it, or they just don't know how to use it, even though they've done the training and whatnot. So that training is so critical, but that continuous adoption piece. Okay, well, rest of your team are doing really well, but you're not using it. Why not? What's going on? And it could just be that they haven't got around to using it yet. But then that's even more important to go and get them to use it and get them to learn. Because like I said, Scott, once it becomes a habit, once they intentionally use it every day, they become reliant on it, but also to get all the most gains out of it at that point.
Yeah.
Cool.
So some questions.
I've got a couple of questions here as well as the. So we've got some from a previous webinar, which we've or two previous webinars we thought we'd answer, but also some for here as well. So which are in the live chat. So we've got one. Will we receive a copy of the slides after? Yes, you will. Easy one. What's the actual availability for orgs under 500 users? Yeah. So one of the things there actually is probably, there is a question lower down here, but at the moment it's only available for enterprise customers, so people buying EAs, and you have to buy a minimum of 300 users right now, and those 300 users have to be E3 or E5 users, ideally E5 users. So there's a limitation right now. We don't have an answer right now for this because although indication what Microsoft provided is that this will be available to CSP users in their Q4 times, somewhere between April and June, July time. But until we get official confirmation, we don't know. We also don't know quite yet whether the 300 user limit is going to change, or whether it's going to go down. We believe it will, but we just don't know when, and we don't know by how much. But it's certainly true that this will take a while to roll out across everybody, and so it's getting yourself ready for it. So when it is available, you can then go and enable it.
I think for those of you keeping close to the news will see that Microsoft's investment in the UK just recently announced, with I think the Prime Minister involved and everything else, was a $2.5 billion investment, and a lot of that is into data center capability to power this stuff. There's also training and all sorts of other things going on from an AI perspective in the UK, but the power this stuff requires at the data center level is enormous. And I think some of the reasons you're seeing the limits on this are because the throttling of this means that you can't roll it out to everybody and suddenly everybody's going to be powered and using this. It's going to take a while to get the data centers up to speed, and I think that's a a big part of this actually over the next few months. So, but they move fast. I know that. I used to be in Microsoft myself. They move very quickly, and some of this stuff will get built over the next few months. And so, yeah, I think by the early summer, I think you'll start to see this thing rolling out in a bigger way.
Yeah.
So, shall we go to the next question? So this, I mean, the first one was, what type of organizations should be considering this, and what's the ROI at $30 a user? I think we've touched a bit on the ROI and where we think we can see immediate savings. The answer to what type of organizations, from my perspective, is every organization should be looking at this to try and understand where it's going and what you can benefit from it. The optimization of using the Office suite is incredible if you get into it and if you do the learning, as we said. What I also think, by the way, this is also a bit of a gateway into AI more generally across the organization, because we all live and breathe inside Outlook and Word and Excel and all those things. It's a very natural place to start using it and start to see the benefits. What it will also do is open our eyes and open everybody's eyes to the power of AI across all the different systems and tools that you use. And I think that's one of the things that we'll start to see out of it. So it's a bit of a gateway into AI in that sense. And I think there's a lot of learning to be done by all organizations just using this Copilot technology.
We've got another question coming actually, Scott, before you pop on the next one. Is Microsoft removed Windows Copilot? Has Microsoft removed Windows Copilot? We have seen it disappearing from machines. So it's an interesting question, because we have also seen this sometimes. The availability of Copilot is pretty decent most of the time, but occasionally we get a few issues dropping. And this particular one, I think it's down to a security update in Edge. What Copilot uses Edge indirectly as its mechanism to deliver the content or the questions in and out of it. So even if you're inside of Word, it's actually Edge kind of feeding Word. So whenever you open up Word now with Copilot enabled, you'll see Edge opens up as well. So actually, I think what we find is there's something you've done inside of Edge, or something you've done out kind of around an update that's caused Edge to kind of malfunction, thus remove access to it.
Yeah,
like,
and we're going to
talk more technical one. Yeah.
After Christmas, we're going to be talking about the deployment and how we went through it, and some of that we'll touch on some of that, and how you build this thing and make it work. But yeah, we could check on that Windows piece and see exactly what's happening, make sure that we feed that back in the feedback after the session. I think. Well, should we carry on? I think the questions here, which function? I presume that means that these are questions that came from the previous webinars. I think the functions we've talked about in terms of sales, marketing, services potentially, in terms of what we're doing, building statements of work and getting those things quicker into a long form format. These things are all of which are huge benefits in time and indeed ROI in terms of costs of outsourcing certain things in marketing. So I think there's a lot of that. We're going to get more into that as we go through the sessions and have more detail on what really we're seeing over time. I think, Matt, you were looking at the ROI on usage and minutes and hours saved a day in the various roles, and I think we'll get into more of that over the next few weeks, won't we?
Yeah, definitely. And say the short-term stuff, anybody creating content, as Scott says, anybody creates content, this will save them time. It will give them a first draft, it will give them a swing at what they're doing and whatever. In the long term, everybody will make use, because as connectors become, we spoke about earlier, as connectors become more embedded into Copilot, using it as a gateway to all other bits of data. You got to see anybody who accessing Salesforce data, or even on your mobile phone as well. Copilot's on your mobile phone, right? So if you've got a connector to Salesforce, I could ask Copilot on my mobile phone, I'm just about to jump into a meeting now, what was last month's sales figures for this customer, whatever, and it will actually give out that information through Copilot.
Deployment, we're going to touch on that more next time, aren't we?
Yeah, we're going, but really quickly, adoption. It's probably my two things. You need to get it out there. You need to train staff. You need to be able to measure who's using it, and then get them adopting it, and then get them to go back through again and adopt it, and make sure they're getting the best bits out of all of the Copilot suite, not just one application. They're just using it in Word. It's probably because they're familiar with Word and not familiar with Excel. Maybe we need to do a bit of training with Excel. So yeah, training, adoption. Yeah. How secure? I think we covered this already. I think essentially your data. It's your data. So as long as your data is secured, then you're secured.
Yeah. Again, training we've talked about as well. I think that the training is critical. I think people need to understand how to use it. So the sort of white gloving and the early adoption is critical to be able to do that. There are going to be tools about using the prompts across the organization. So there's a thing called, is it called Studio? Is it called
Copilot Studio? Yeah.
Copilot Studio, where you sort of share the data around the organization. And again, it's protected to within your own organization. It's not public data about these are the prompts I've used. This is the way I've used it. And we're starting to see that across our organization as well. So you're going to see, training happening amongst the various parts of the organization rather as individual training. So I think there's a lot of learning to be done, as I mentioned before. I think there's an awful lot to learn about how we use the Office suite already, the big investment we all make in Office E5 or whatever we've got. And so that, just looking at how we optimize that as well as using Copilot is a huge part of it for me. And there we already touched on that one as well. So that came up on the other questions. So hopefully soon is the answer there, but we'll keep you updated on that one. Okay. Matt, a little bit more about the resources that are going to be sent out and what's going to happen.
Yeah, sure. So there's a bunch of webinar which we'll send out and a bunch of links to blogs and stuff that we've been writing over time and our learnings and stuff. But there's a bunch of services that Ultima deliver right now in Copilot. These are developing. Obviously, we've only had this for close to 2 months. We've seen it a bit before that, but we've only actually been using it ourselves inside our tenant for the last couple of months. So he's still building out. But right now we have a readiness assessment. So it's a free of charge 2-hour assessment. We go in there, look at your adoption, look at currently where you are with 365 to see if there's any changes you need to make to your 365 platform or licensing or whatever. We look at your data security at a very high level, where you're storing data, what controls do you have, how are you making right use of the E3, E5 tools, and then we'll provide an assessment back of it. You can book those right now with Ultima, so please go ahead and get those, and one of our Copilot team will go ahead and start running those with you. Security advisory, this is around making sure that your data, like I spoke about before, Copilot doesn't introduce new data compliance problems, it just surfaces existing ones. So this is all around making sure that your data quality and your data protection is in the right state. So it's a service go around, we look at your security date of your data and then give advisory around what needs to be tightened up, what needs to be changed, what features you need to turn on to make secure DLP and that sort of stuff. Then preparation, so this is making sure that you're ready for Copilot for Copilot 365. So are you on modern management? Do you have files in OneDrive? If not, what do you do to get it in there? Do you have latest enterprise Bing search, or what's now called just Copilot enabled? Do you have your files migrated into SharePoint from file services on-prem? Although actually that's slightly less important now, but still worth doing because there's now a connector for file servers, a third-party connector you can connect to talk to third-party file servers. You've got stuff in 365. If your emails are still in Exchange, you won't be able to read them, and a bunch of other health checks and stuff. Then we have adoption. I think probably on top of the list is make sure you understand that who's using it, how they're using it, how to train them, how to retrain them, and how to get the most out of adoption. And then we've got a Copilot workshop, which is essentially a kind of art of the possible. We can go in there, work with some of the business owners, stakeholders, understand, tell them a bit more what it does, and then start to work with them. How would they get use out of Copilot? What would good look like? How they're going to get the most productivity? How they're going to train the staff, and what particular personas or use cases can we make use of?
Okay. So getting you started today, we wanted to get started with Copilot by using the Bing Chat Enterprise. It's now called Copilot, but that's something that I think everyone should be doing, making sure you're using the enterprise version of Bing Chat, because that's where it's safest and where you can use, your data is not being ingested into the public domain, as well as Windows 11 Copilot, which has already been mentioned. It goes up and down, it seems, but is available now. I think we've got the Copilot assessments we've just talked about that Matt's just reviewed. They're ready to go, and we can get you up to speed on that very, very quickly just to see where you are. There's also a review of base licensing requirements. E3 and E5 are the minimum requirements today, but just going through that, understanding what you've got, where you are, it's always good to do a licensing review anyway, just to see if it's optimized. And then obviously we're going to send out and give you the access to all the resources and videos and demos, and as well as some of the Microsoft sites to go and look at. So there's quite a lot you can go and get into today, even if you don't have access to it right now. The last thing to say is thank you for your time and attention today, and also for the last 3 sessions. We are going to do more of these. We're going to get into January, February, and March. We'll be doing much more on the adoption side and what we're going to do with that, and look at what we've done with deployment and case studies and all these different areas. So we will keep dropping these in as required. As we learn things, we'll formalize them into the few months into the early part of next year. But as they come up and there are things that we think are relevant, or things that we've learned, or things that new news, if you like, of how to use this stuff has come through, then we'll just drop some more in and just do quick updates for everybody. But thank you again for your time and attention. I hope they're useful. Please give us feedback. Also add more questions. If you need more information from us, please just contact your contacts inside Ultima. We're open all the time to again answer any of the questions you've got in this area as we continue to learn. And the last thing for me to say is, for those of you I won't see before Christmas, have a great festive season and a very happy new year, and we'll hopefully see you all the other side in January. So thanks very much again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all.